1910, the Town Board of Commissioners decided to create a department that would recognize the valiant hard work of the men who, for years before, had freely given their time and their talent to the safety of the town, and one that would be the first of many to meet the needs and demands of a growing community. In that year, the Board of Commissioners unanimously voted to create the Mooresville Fire Department, a new department that for the next 100 years would answer the call of service to the town and the surrounding community through the dedication and labors of those who proudly wore and do wear the uniform of firemen. This is their story. This is their story told through their words, lived through their experiences, and witnessed through their eyes. A story that is a part of the town, a story that is a part of the community, a story that is a part of us. This is the story of the Mooresville Fire Department, the first 100 years.
I started with the fire department in 1969 as a volunteer. Tried a couple times to get on as a volunteer and got turned down. And then finally did get on as a volunteer. And that was back when the department was mainly volunteers. They had a few paid people, but it was mostly volunteers completely, you know.
Yeah.
First fire I ever went to was a riding lawnmower. Out when we got there. Wasn't much of nothing to it. Wasn't long after that, we had a fire, and a lot of people don't know what an Indian firefighter is, but they throwed one of them on my back. And anybody in the fire service knows what it is. I don't even know whether they use them today or not.
Oh yeah, we still got them.
Went off down through the woods, we had a woods fire. And on the way down, I was asking the guy beside me, don't remember who it was, I said, how you turn this thing on? And they just died laughing at me and said, well, I'll get it. When you get down here at the bottom of this hill, we'll show you how to make it work. And you had to pump it. And there was 5 gallons of water on your back. It was heavy, and you had to pump like crazy and try to put this woods fire out.
I remember when we'd go out to a brush fire, we would have the old Indian fighters. You may still have them.
Oh yeah, we still got them.
Got the Indian fighters, you know. Those things got heavy after a while.
Yes, sir.
They sure did. I know now you got some of the Hearst on the trucks. The first piece of extrication equipment we ever had, other than a saw, just a regular saw and the electric saws and was a piece that they had made at Mooresville Iron Works. So it was a can called a can opener. Still on the truck up there. Still works actually. But it looks like a can opener. It's
I remember
just a giant can opener. Yeah. And that's what and believe me, it'll work on the top of a car. At least it would then. I doubt very seriously with the way they construct them now. So yeah, the equipment's definitely improved. It's much better. Guys are much better trained on it. It's just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Yeah. Now, when?
Oh yeah, early on, when I went to work at the fire, all we had was there was 62, which we call 62 Howe.
Yeah.
It was just a custom-built truck made by Howe, H-O-W-E, and that was the main truck we had. And it was straight drive, and then we had the old 38 Ford and 51 Ford, and the old 1921 was still in service. And I just made sure I got on the 62 or the 51 before that. I made sure I got there and got on something before I got to the 38 or 21 because it wasn't much of a fire truck. And the other two wasn't much of a fire truck. Well, the 62 was, but it had seen its day.
Remember when we had that was that truck's in the movie Leatherheads.
Yeah.
And so it was Chief Green, I took it to Gaffney, South Carolina. And when we pulled up on the scene of the movie, you hadn't seen so many people flocking trucking all your life. You'd have thought it was a 2007 model or something, some kind of big spatial view truck. I mean, they flocked that thing, they looked at it underneath, everywhere you could look. And whenever we got ready to have to move it, they said, "How you gonna crank it?" I said, "I hand crank it." And they thought I was pulling their legs, and I got out there and I hand cranked it. They kind of realized, they said, "Does it not have a starter?" I said, "Yeah." "I want you to start." I said, "Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. I know when I hand crank it, it works." So,
I approached the town commissioners about restoring it. I said, it's either needs to be restored because it's not safe, or you need to make a decision on what you're going to do with it. And my preference was for them to restore it because the town bought it brand new, and I knew a man in North Wilkesboro that did that, and we spent a lot of money on it. And it was 80 years old then. So it's 80, it's 80, it was 1921, so it was 80 years old when we restored it. It would be, about 89 years old now, 88. It'd be about 88.
88, yeah.
But the gentleman that restored it, I basically was going to just want him to make it look nice. And he wouldn't touch it unless he could totally restore it and make it back like it was. He had researched these things and had already done quite a few of them for some people in New York and you name it, South Carolina, and just all over the United States. And so, like I say, he told me, he said, if I restore it, you're going to have more money in it than it's worth today. He said, but if you keep it, it'll be worth more than what you have in it in years to come. But he wouldn't touch it unless he could take it completely apart, plumb down to the frame, totally restore it, everything, gauges, seat, everything. And the city council went along with it. And they restored it, and he researched it, had the right decals and everything put on it, had a chemical tank that, it used to have a chemical tank that was gone, and we found one in Pennsylvania, just a lot of different things, had a mahogany steering wheel that was gone, found one of them, and I put that back together. It was a piece of junk. And I put that back together myself. They had somebody redo the seat. It was, of course, it's just got like a horse and buggy carriage seat on it. Had no windshield on it. Was not supposed to be there. They took it down. He put it back like it was supposed to be when it was bought brand new. Even the seat. He was so particular. Even the seat was stuffed with horsehair like it was originally when it was brand new. So the truck is pretty much, like he told me, he said it's pretty much totally restored, other than the fact that anybody that knows about antique vehicles, even the nuts and bolts have to be a certain kind, and he said that's the only thing on it that's not like it's supposed to be, you know. But, you know, when one is totally complete like it's supposed to be, everything has to be just so. But the truck is a pump and everything. He redid the pump. It could pump water today just like it was when it was brand new. And the great thing about restoring it and keeping it, that thing was used to pump water for the town. Now I don't know for how long, weeks I think, it sat on the creek bank and pumped water for the town. So there's a lot of history
Yeah.
related to that vehicle. And, you know, I thought it would be a shame for them to just
Yeah.
let it go by the wayside. When it was, it did a lot of important things
Not just for the fire department, but for the town itself.
for the town, you know.
Yeah.
And that was back when the town, before Lake Norman, when they got the water out of the creek.
Yep. It is truly something worth holding on to.
Well, it's a beautiful piece of equipment.
It is.
Anybody, it turns heads every time it's put on display.
Yeah.
It really does.
The 63 Howe, H-O-W-E, crazy name for a truck, that was the name of the manufacturer. It was a custom pumper,
Mm-hmm.
custom made for the fire department, and it was the first custom fire truck the town of Mooresville ever had. The rest of them were just cabs and chassis of something, they put a fire truck body on. And the reason I like that so much because I was so young at the time, and I think at the time I was the youngest person ever hired at the fire department. They said, you'll never be able to drive this truck. No power steering. To get it out of the station, to get it up on Main Street, you literally had to stand up in the seat, stand up on the wheel, and turn it. So I got to experience that, and you had to be pretty strong to do that. And to sit there and turn it, I had to stand up in the wheel. The gears were not synchronized. We just went from second to third to fourth, even though it was a 5-speed. And I mean, you grind those gears on every time you change it, but yeah, the older guy said, you'll never be able to drive this truck, you'll never be able to make it. I think there was some doubt. Joe Benson, one of them, he didn't think I was ever going to make it in the fire department. Whether driving a fire truck, working a fire, or passing the EMT course. But I fooled them all. And so I guess that's my favorite truck because I was told I'd never be able to operate that truck. And I did.
Got the Howie, and it was a big event because it's the first custom truck that the town had ever had. So we were eagerly awaiting its arrival. And so it was a Saturday night, and we knew that it was coming in. Of course, in the days that you didn't have the cell phones and this sort of thing. So about 1 o'clock, it rolls into the station up there on Main Street with the right side damaged. It had been in a wreck.
Oh, Lord. Didn't know
And
that.
so the guy spent the night, took it out early the next morning to take it back to wherever he was to have it repaired.
My insurance hadn't come in. Charlie Troutman had sent in, and he told me, he said, do not answer the fire alarm. And I was living on Magnolia Street, and I heard the alarm go off. That old system was set on top of the roof up there, and it would blow the count out, say like number 12 was across the street from the city hall there. And that thing would go boom, and it'd pause and it'd go boom, boom, and then it would repeat itself. It had 4 times that it blew out that number 12. Well, if you were a volunteer fireman, wherever you were working or at home in bed, whatever, when you heard it, you counted that thing and you got in your vehicle and you went to the scene of the fire because that's where it was at. And the old system worked by a call box on the pole, and you opened the door, pulled the lever down, and if it was number 12, it came into the police department and the fire department there, and it was a long box about like this. It had a tape run through it, and it'd punch out 1, and then it'd punch out 1 and 1, it'd punch out 12, 4 times. It'd punch it out on that tape. And the firemen, if it just came in on that box, see, they had no prior knowledge except that. Now the other system was the call-ins on the telephone. And when they called in, the man at the desk in the communication, like myself, would say fire department, and of course most of the time they were very, very upset. Sometimes you couldn't manage hardly even because they were just hysterical. People, when your house is on fire, you're really upset. Or your car or whatever it was, or an accident. And we had a Rolodex there, and whatever the street number was, the closest thing to that call box, we'd flip over the Rolodex. We'd step outside and we had these little wheels that had notches on them. And you inserted that thing in that system on a peg, pulled the handle down, and it did the same thing it did when you pulled it at the pole. It would go, and then the old horn up would go boom, 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 you know, for 12.
Mm-hmm.
And it got really complicated when they put in the master boxes out on what we call Plaza Drive now, and at that time is 150 bypass. We had Graybore, Templon, Gem Spun, and they had master boxes that worked on a pressure system, and when the pressure dropped, even though they didn't even have a fire, it would blow out their numbers, and they were triple digit numbers like 275. So that thing would go boom, boom, and then pause, and then it blow 7 more times, and then pause and blow 5 times. Very, very confusing to some of the volunteer firemen. They couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, you know, and they get up in the middle of the night in their sleep, and they come to the fire station. Where is that fire? I couldn't count that. What is that thing doing? But you got used to all that stuff.
You would hear, it was really funny because it was a big air horn on top of the building, and it would sound out, it would blast out the code. Whether it was 17, you'd hear one long one, and then you'd hear, wait a second, you'd hear other long ones. And it got to where you could really hear it well, even in the dead of night with the transfer train, with the transfer truck going by your window. You could hear that horn, regardless of where you were within a mile or two radius. Your ears just got accustomed to it. Some of the people with those boxes had lines run into their house, and they'd have a little clanger. So when a box went off, it would ring in their house also. Then you would have to call the station, and you had code word.
What was it?
Code word was Brock, B-R-O-C-K.
Yeah.
And that came from the candy bar.
No, see, nobody's known what it was coming, how it come from.
Yeah.
Brock was a candy bar.
Brock was a candy bar.
Okay.
That's where, in my understanding, that's where that code came from.
I'm scared to death of snakes. And I had a fireman, Mitchell Bryan. He has threw more snakes on me, or rubber snakes, stuff like that. Told him he was going to kill me one of these days and give me a heart attack. But he was one of the worst. I guess the funniest part. Everybody got a laugh out of it. We had a house up here. We was going to do training. And partially Jeff and I was in charge of the training, burning that house. Here goes old Joe. Prob's been through there, looking around, making sure everything was right. Oh, there's a chest of drawers there. Oh, might be some goodies in there. Oh, the chest of drawers, and there's the biggest black snake you've ever seen laying there. They said they heard me come through that house like an elephant. They laughed, and man, it was funny afterwards, but I thought I was going to die on that one.
Western Auto was probably the most memorable fire. That was
Come up a lot.
actually happened to. I was captain then. Pete was still chief. I was on duty that day. That wasn't funny. I mean, you laugh about it now, but we got that call that Western Auto was on fire, and then one of the policemen, I heard him on the radio, Jack Murray, he said, "You better tell them to bring everything they got." Said the whole side of this town's on fire. And it was down on Main Street from the basement of City Hall. It looked like the whole side of town was on fire. I mean, the flames was very, very visible. The thing about that is, we rolled out of there. I had Gene Caldwell as my driver operator. Here I was, the shift captain. There was just 3 of us on duty. There was 2 of them had gone to lunch. Then we let them go to lunch. So there was 3 of us, and the other one was a rookie, had never fought a fire, Rick Robinson. So I told him, I said, we were running split loads then. A lot of people don't know what I'm talking about, but we split the load in the hose bed where we could undo it and pull 2 2.5s off, and hook two supply lines to the truck. So we'd have 2 2.5s. That was before we started large hammered hose. So I told Gene, I said, first hydrant you see, stop. Let me get off with him and show him how to hook us. We was running ambulance then. We first was just concentrating on teaching these guys what to do on ambulance, because we had 2 jobs and he had very little fire training at that time. That was back before certification. You didn't have to be firefighter or nothing. That was still on the job training. So I said, so I got him stopped. I jumped off with him. I busted the hose bed in 2, pulled both the lines off, wrapped them around the hydrant, and I said, put your foot on that. When you see the tail lights light up down here, when he hits them on the truck, you know we're stopped, and you start hooking them up. And like I say, it looked like the world was burning down. And so, what do? We get down there, and I jump off, and to go ahead and hook to go ahead and break the loads, because I had pulled it off to coupling and break the load so we could hook it into the truck. And I have one hose hanging out of the truck that we drug, and he was able to save one at the hydrant, and the other one we took it with us. So he lost one of them, and so there we was with 1 2.5 supply, and the store fully involved. And so anyway, that's what happened, and then we just did the best we could, and then we was waiting on volunteers and waiting on the other people to bring the other trucks, and somebody saw the other hose hanging out of the truck, and they hooked, at some point in time, they hooked it to another hydrant. So we ended up getting the double 2.5s to the truck. Of course, we called for Statesville to bring their ladder truck, and the only thing that saved us there was we had 2 solid brick walls between us and the other buildings. If it had been on the other side, it would have run from one corner to the other. But it was a pretty spectacular fire, and I'm pretty sure it was myself, because Gene was the pump operator, and myself and Chuck Lee had showed up. And it looked like the fire, we didn't know, you couldn't tell, but the windows was still in the building. But we didn't know that. And he backed me up, and I throwed water on it. The 2 of us throwed it. No, Chuck did. Chuck threw the water on it, and I was backing him up. And when he hit the glass, he exploded and blowed it plumb across the street on him and myself. And he got nicknamed Levy after that, because we just gone through a series of films about levies, which is liquid boiling explosions. And it just blowed the glass plumb across the street. And so that was, we laughed about it many times after that, but it was serious, and I mean, it was raining glass. And we didn't have any water then, you know. I mean, since then, I think they've haven't they put brand new water lines down Main Street, because the water lines were so small. I mean, we just we sucked them dry. we just didn't have it. And I'm thankful that I know we talked about that before I retired, that all of that needed to be upgraded. I'm glad they did that when they redid the street.
Yeah. Okay, tell us how you got started with the fire department.
Well, about knowing most of the firemen at the time anyway, I done put my application in. I think Doug was chief. No, excuse me, that was still, it was, yeah, Tim. And then after about 2 weeks, I was making a trip one evening up to the mail, drop some mail off at the post office. Well, I happened to look up toward Western Otto, and I seen fire. So I done heard sirens. So I thought, well, they're on the way. So I went on up and dropped the bills off so they could make sure they got in the mail. And come back around, cut up that little side street up to Main, and one of the fire trucks come up with Denny and Nancy driving. And I got out of my little car, and Denny and him jumped out of the truck, and he said, "What are you doing here? You don't see no rubber boots on your feet. You don't get you a big coat, some rubber boots on your feet." So I did that. Went home and come up, and I done stuff like pull hoses and run between trucks and just whatever I could. It excited me to death because I was really excited about trying to get on the fire department. And after it was all over with and said and done, they had their final meeting, or the Tuesday night meeting, and the next day, that night they got me on the fire department. And so I was extremely thrilled because I'd had years of service with Duke Power, being on fire brigades and fire systems and stuff anyway.
Okay. Tell us about the Western Auto fire.
Well, it was a pretty hot fire. Wasn't a whole lot you could do inside. They pretty much attacked it as soon as they had all 3 trucks there. They couldn't get enough water. They had to call the county departments in, so they brought in dump tanks, and that started helping a lot. And they had a lot of firefighters for that particular, for those departments that was there assisting. And like I said, I was mainly at the trucks and on the outside, and I do know they advanced to the roof. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Roy Bryan was one of them that went to the roof, if I'm not mistaken. And I heard somebody holler over the top of the roof, "We're gonna have to get down. The roof's getting critical." That's how hot that fire was burning.
Wow.
So the chief and the captains come up and hollered at him and said, "Go ahead and pull off the roof." And that's when they had called Statesville truck to come in. Because at that time, we just had our basic fire trucks. So basically, the Statesville bought their ladder truck in. And this was a funny thing, I'll never forget it. When they hooked the truck up, as soon as they fired the engine, they couldn't get no water except a trickle out of the nozzle. And so we began to hooking 2 more fire trucks of it to try to feed the Statesville fire truck. Finally got it to where they could get enough to where they could start attacking the roof of the ladder. And once we got that going, it pretty much knocked the fire down. So that was pretty much what saved that section. And luckily the buildings did have fire protection between the buildings. So they were crude, they're old 4-inch brick type, but it still done their job.
Yeah.
And kept the fire from spreading to either side.
Yeah.
But it didn't last but about, I think, 11:30, and we had everything under control at that time.
Now the Western Auto was on Main Street where at that time?
Downtown, right where the old Delk's department store, Delk's 5 and Down was.
Which is now, I believe, where the mayor's Alexander Zachary Jewelers is.
Of course, the Western Auto fire was, I guess, about the biggest that we've had. And that was an all-nighter. I was off duty, but everybody had to come back in. And at that time, I lived out 150. And when I came off of 1109 and turned on to 150, you could see, not actual flames, but you could see the glow in the air.
Wow.
And I knew it was big. And like I say, that was an all-nighter, and it was tough. It was tough.
Had one little guy, one of the fires, now this is a story when the high school caught on fire way back yonder, and Bill Cabins was funeral home Cabins, and he was like me, he was a heavyweight. And he had straddled the hose, and Charlie Troutman and them laughed till the day all them old guys died. They could see Bill had a hold of that hose and the nozzle, and he had way too much pressure on those things. Those little 2.5-inch hoses worked better than about 60 pounds to 80 pounds, not over that, because it took too many men to hold it, you know. And he was riding that thing. He looked like he was in a rodeo. He was off the ground. It was just going down.
Your most memorable experience?
I would say it was the FCX fire. That was probably the most memorable I can think of, because there's about 13 of us, including a few volunteer firemen from the counties, ended up in the hospital for 2.5 days.
Wow.
But of course, I was one of the first ones on the nozzle, because I was pretty gung-ho myself back then, and I went in with Bobby and them coming in with us, Bobby Collins. And so we went on in. I lasted through a Scott Pack bottle, and I finally had to leave, go back out, because my bell was going off. As soon as I got the chance, I reloaded and come back in and start again. But unbeknownst to us, there were no placards on the building, and if you look at the history of the fire department, that's when things started changing with OSHA and things like that about placarding and having the right information on the sites at projects, places you were going to.
Yeah.
And come find out there were 6 gallons of paraquat that was unidentified, that we were stepping all over. It was crushed in glass bottles. There's each gallon bottles. But we had no clue. And Joe Benson was one that was in with me when I went in. And when we finally back out, me and Joe both, they had some straw bales of hay on the other side. And we'd had some firefighters on the roll-up doors throwing water in that way. So we'd got most of it pushed back.
Yeah.
So well, we had to get out and then send another crew in. But as me and Joe were sitting there, I asked Joe, I said, best I can remember, I said, Joe, how you feeling? He said, I'm not feeling good at all. And at first I thought I was just tired, because you know, you get, the adrenaline gets to pumping,
Yeah.
and you're working about twice as hard as you normally would. Well, the more we sat there, the worse we felt. And I can't remember who it was, and I believe it might have been Bobby or one of them come over to us and said, y'all don't look too good. So they called the rescue squad over there to come take us to the hospital. But me and Joe, if I remember right, were the first 2 to go. So they loaded us up in the ambulance, and we went to the hospital. Well, come to find out, they come straggling in behind us. And I guess the memorial part of it was, after they first figured out that they had put us on KVO IVs, and what they were dealing with, they didn't know till after they called poison center. So after they made all the trouble to do that, then they come back to us within 15 minutes and took all that back off of us and said, poison control said not to do that. You're just forcing that poison on. Once they found out what the problem was, they had paraquat in the building. And so we spent, all 13 of us basically, except we had one firefighter that was in pretty bad shape. He was on the outside without Scott Pack catching smoke. And that was before they really got really strict, and it didn't matter where you was at, you was going to have a hair pack on. But he made it out, all of us made it out all right, but it's kind of a closeness that kind of come commemoral, or whatever you want to call it, between all of us in there, and all the other firefighters would come and visit us. You know, it just seemed like it was a brotherhood that even developed even greater than what you would normally see.
Yeah.
The lake house.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Mountain Island Lake, yeah.
Okay, well, I probably got in trouble over that. We had a lake house, and they had had this for a number of years out there on Mountain Island Lake. And it was really nice. It had, and a lot of people used it at one time, but I'm going to have to be careful what I say. It had, everybody kept it up, but it was just sitting there. Nobody much was using it. I was single, I used it a lot. So when it came up that the people, they had looked at some other things. For example, if you go to the bridge out here on 150, the 2 lots immediately to the left there, on the Duke Power were going to give us those lots. But we really didn't want them. For some reason, I honest to God, for goodness, can't remember why it was. But yeah, they were going to give us those two lots there, which would have been very nice. And so we started looking at selling the Mountain Island land. And as well as I remember, it went for a while, but we did get a buyer on it. And it was $10,000, I think, 12 something. It was just a pittance if you look at it in today's dollars. And I think I was the only one that voted against selling it.
You didn't want it to go nowhere, did you?
No, I didn't want to go anywhere.
Got a lot of use out of
I
it.
didn't know.
Where was the baby delivered? Where did that happen?
I better not mention the streets or addresses.
Well,
But I tell you what, that was I guess I can say this. I knew the mother, and I was an ugly woman. So if you can imagine laying there on a couch, gapped open, I can say that. Can I say leg spread? Laying, okay, let's delete that. She was an ugly woman laying there, getting ready to have a baby in the position that babies are born, and seeing her in that position, it make you want to throw up. And so when the baby was born, I was an ugly baby. And so we got to cut the cord, me and Roy Brandon, tied that thing off. I called the hospital and told them what's going on. They said, and we had an OB kit. So we clamped it off, tied it off, cut it, wrapped it up good, and brought mother and daughter in. That was that's probably the nastiest call I've been on. But I see that girl, I hadn't seen her lately, but I saw her not too long ago, in recent years. That's an ugly girl. That ugly baby grew up to be an ugly young lady. Now she's well in her 20s now. She's probably 25 years old, I guess now.
Wow.
Probably maybe older than that. But I was an ugly woman and I was an ugly baby. So, how am I supposed to say that? So that's the first time I've been involved in childbirth. And after that experience, there's some good-looking women, some pretty babies, but not this case. So I don't want to do that anymore. So anybody else pregnant or water broke or something, man, we just held it in and hurry. I said, hurry, let's get to the hospital. We're not delivering this one. Not knowing what we're going to get into.
The commissioners and the sheriff's department and highway patrol and firemen, EMS, everybody get around for the dinner after the Christmas parade, and shrimp and oysters. I can't eat oysters, but I can tear in those shrimp. That's what I did.
Well, Phil always kind of handled the oyster stew. He was kind of the guru, or Chef Phil on that, but he always handled the oyster stew.
Do you remember what year that got started in?
I think, if I am not mistaken, that when I started, and I started in '62, I think that even at that time, that was kind of a given.
We've been hearing it was going on a long time.
Yeah.
And we was curious, wondering how it got started, how long it's been going. So
I think it would have been prior probably to '62, if I'm not mistaken.
City manager come to me one day, and of course, we were just busting out of the seams at the city hall because we had police department in the basement, fire department in the basement. They were growing and needed new staff members for different positions and different departments, and so everybody was needing space. And he approached me about adding on to the end of the truck bays and making some more space for the fire department. But at that time, they also had the building on the corner, which is now the Fire Station 1. It was an old Carolina Tire building that the town had bought, and it's sat empty for years. And I approached him about letting the firemen renovate it and make a fire station out of it, because I knew we had the talent inside the fire department to do such a thing. And I also knew that if we did not do it, I mean, I talked him, I talked negative against him adding on to the existing building because I knew the police and fire, one of them was going to get to move. And I knew if we went out and get to move, then we were going to be there and the police was going to move. And he went along with the idea, along with the commissioners, they went along with the idea. We actually had to get special legislation through the state legislatures. Robert Brawley helped us get that. We had to get some kind of special legislation to give us permission to do that. And so they did do that, and we actually tore the building down except for the roof, ourselves, the firemen. Some of the volunteers helped as well. We spent 9 months building it. I think we spent about $130,000 on it. Had over 4,000 man hours in it, and we just took the fire truck up there every day and worked on the building. And if an alarm come in, then we jumped in the truck and took off. And it was a good public relations project. We'd be out there working, and people come down the road on Main Street blowing the horn, waving, you know. And when we had open house, we had over 300 people for the open house, which was awesome, we thought.
Let me mention your feet.
Oh,
Your
God,
shoes.
they were terrible. They were, I had the roughest smell. My daughter's got the same feet. As she turns about 45, then it'll straighten out. Those days, I couldn't stand my own shoes. I had to put them out in the wash, in the apparatus bay. If I wanted somebody out of my room, take my shoes off. They left. Oh, I can remember Pete Chief's office was here, captain's room was here. And I can remember Pete coming in with a spraying lights on every morning. Oh, God, they were terrible. Snoring, when you live together like that, snoring and feet, they got a little rough.
Of course, you know, I'm an ex-athlete in town, and I've been on a lot of teams, and as I told Doug one time, I enjoyed the fire department team more than any team I've been on. At no time, if I was in trouble, did I really worry about it. If I had financial trouble at home, if I had health problems, if I was in trouble on the fire, the guys I could depend on. I'll never forget, my father died, and they brought the fire truck to the funeral. So that was something.
Camaraderie between the guys. We were close, you know, and I miss that. We, you know, you live with somebody one day out of 3, and you get to know them, and you trust them, and you have to depend on them. And I really like that, and I do miss it.
I've been on the department for 26 years. I consider it family. It was real close-knitted bunch of boys.
What about today? Passing on, you know, we talked about it having a certain amount of paid and the 25 volunteer and all that and everything. Today, as it's getting bigger and all, what would you like for the guys to remember to hold on to about the old fire department, or what would you like for them to, you know, to pass on to them as time goes by?
I think that I would just like for them to know our history. When I was in school, I didn't really like history, But the older I've gotten, I love history. And the history of the fire department, I hope we never lose it. I want them to know, you know, how it used to be when the fire department was on Broad Street and the water department and all that was on Broad Street, little old building over there. And now, you know how it's grown, but always, I guess, just always remember your roots. Don't ever get above that. And just, if you want to be a firefighter, be the best you can be. If you don't want that, then you don't need to get into